Curriculum Committee. We will be discussing the climate survey results. And of course, we have with us my committee members, Rachel Gilliar and Sandra Alvarez, as well as our liaison, Dr. Feeney, our superintendent, Dr. Posse, our director of guidance, Mr. Arini, and also with us on the camera, but not presenting, is Dr. Borsella. So we look forward to having we saw some of this at Tuesday night's meeting, and we look forward to a deeper dive today. So thank you, Dr. Feeney.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We will switch over to the presentation. As you mentioned, this is sort of doing this in the reverse order. In the past, we've given lengthy ones at the curriculum committee and an abbreviated version at the board meeting. The board already saw an abbreviated version of this presentation. We added some slides, some information to expand on what was presented on Tuesday night, as well as address some of the questions that came up in the discussion after the presentation. So this is the fifth year we have done a climate survey. This year, as with last year, we did it through the Thought Exchange platform. We've got a combination of multiple choice and a couple of open-ended questions. We're always looking to make sure we hear feedback from the folks who are taking the survey. As such, we've adjusted the length of time, some of the questions to reduce the length of time necessary to complete the surveys. And the nice thing over the last few years, we've always had open-ended questions, but it used to be a bear to really analyze those. The analysis of the open-ended questions is a lot easier with some of the AI tools that are provided. Just a quick district overview. Families, those are the survey topics, students, and their survey topics, as well as the staff members. See what the response rate for the 2026 surveys were. We can put that in context with other previous years in a couple of slides. One of the questions that was asked on Tuesday was, what kind of questions are being asked in order to determine safety or belonging or school climate. So I don't want to give away all the questions, but here's a sample of the questions that were asked in each of those categories in terms of determining how a parent, a student, or staff felt about those different categories. School safety, if a student's bullied, if a student is bullied at your child's school, how difficult is it for him or her to get help from an adult? And that's rated on in most cases, a 5-point Likert scale. Overall, how unsafe does your child feel at school? So the combination of those, anywhere from 4 to 8 questions within that category, helps determine the school safety subscore for the surveys. These are the response rates. It's all relative. We continue to have very strong response rates from students. They are a captive audience. This year, I will note, we always looked at how best to do it. We gave it earlier than we have in the past, right after the break, the December break. Response rate decreased for teachers, but for any other survey, even a 39% response rate is pretty good. It's quite good, as a matter of fact. Families, a little worried about that declining response rate. In the note, some families may be aware of that. The initial link that was sent out by Thought Exchange did not permit families to respond from multiple kids. That was an error on their part. They changed it. It didn't become, it wasn't brought to our attention until probably about 4 days after the survey was released. So they had to close that survey, open up a new one. They merged all the results eventually and send out a new link. So that confusion probably caused us a little bit of a drop in our parental response. So overall, student responses, these are the different categories. Some of these categories we no longer survey for students. Grit, things from school belonging to climate, expectations, safety. We've got the change from 2025, change from 2022. Overall, you see a modest decrease in these categories. For our students, staff, and teacher, 4 categories, a mix of some decreases, some increases from previous year or from 2022. Family responses, some modest declines. Once again, we trying to reduce the length of time for families to respond, so we did reduce the some categories. Just trying to, you look at the red, you look at the overall, just trying to understand these trend lines. I don't think they suggest any sort of crisis, and especially when you take into account some of the comments, as we'll get to later on, those open-ended questions. Certainly something we want to look at, but I think at least partially, we've got some of the following factors that might impact the responses. 2022 was really a sort of a return to norm after COVID. People were happy to be back, and you had this stabilization period, and I think you got some peak in a lot of our responses there. I think as we've increased academic rigor and expectations, as we've increased academic rigor, the expectations have increased as well. So I think there is a sense that, we need more, even as we've provided more. I think students and staff, they've seen this. I think I always get concerned about, are these truly anonymous? And I always respond, yes, these are anonymous surveys. We can tell if you responded. That's how we can help address some of our response rates, but I can't link, nobody can link, Thought Exchange can't link a particular set of responses to any individual staff member, teacher, parent, or student. So they are truly anonymous in that way. And I think as they've trust that anonymity, I think we're getting greater candor and nuance, which is helpful. And even as we've refined the surveys, that sometimes influences some of those scaled responses. And of course, this was discussed a little bit on Tuesday night. We've got a decrease in the participation rate, so that's going to impact some of our results. So a quick district analysis. These are the open-ended questions we asked on the surveys. We tried to fine-tune those open-ended questions this year and really focus in on, hey, give us one thing that's going to make the school better for you right now, one thing that will help you feel more supported, and is there anything else you need to be successful? So just focusing in on that one thing, I think, helped provide a robust range of responses to those open-ended questions. And just let this sit for a little bit. Some of the highlights by groups. This is, once again, this year's survey. These are quotes from some of the responses on those open-ended questions in our different groups, from the students 4 through 5, 6 through 12. They had slightly different surveys. Our families, our teachers, and our staff members. Commenting on, and just try to pull out some of the comments, regarding different topics, from learning, responsiveness of the building leaders to the teachers, and a sense of belonging. So some nice comments in there. Looking at this year's surveys, these are this year's results, snapshot of this year's results by groups across the district, students in grades 4 through 5 in terms of what they're looking for, some comments pulling out, specials like art or gym should be longer because sometimes it takes a while to explain and get things started. But you'll see some of these themes when we look at a more longitudinal analysis of the surveys over the last 5 years. You're going to see some of these same patterns. These are the priorities by students grades 6 through 12. Manageable workload, requiring a later start time, lighter homework load, true study halls, safe, clean bathrooms, better hallway supervision. We see some of those themes throughout. These are some of the key priorities from our families in this year's survey, 2026. They would appreciate more streamlined and two-way communication. As we'll see, they appreciate, especially with the adoption of Parent Square, sometimes finding it a little overwhelming at times. These are our teachers, those who are directly in front of students each and every day, some of their priorities in this year's survey. And the staff, so this mainly are paraprofessionals, those who are not directly in front of students each and every day and responsible for that full class, but paraprofessionals working with, side by side, sometimes supervising them in large spaces, our counselors, psychologists, and those others that work with our students. So trying to take a look, and this was a request of the board, sort of a longitudinal overview, taking a look at some of the highlights over these 5 years. If we look at our high school level, some of the year-over-year highlights, got it broken up, top part, trending successes, things that are really encouraging and positive, the opportunities, areas where we continue to look for improvements and some responsiveness to what is being provided. These are based on the open-ended responses in the 5 different surveys we've given from 2022 to the 2026 surveys. At the high school level, some successes, the leader influence and responsiveness, student-teacher respect, course variety and autonomy, areas for opportunities, facilities, resources, that balance of the workload and homework, and the school climate and equity issues.
I just got a text that says there's no presentation for people viewing at home.
Should be on. Okay, thank you.
Reach out to Michelle.
You know, I think
It's good?
Yeah, it should be good. It's good feedback. At the middle school level, some of the year-over-year highlights, belonging, anti-bullying efforts, they've appreciated those, teacher support and encouragement, and the integrated team model, they've appreciated. Some of the opportunities, we've heard these, homework, screen-based programs, locker hallway logistics, lunch space, resource equity among subjects, and even a need for a course review of different allocations related to core extension in this case. At the elementary level, this is a combined analysis of the open-ended question responses across the 5 elementaries, respectful, relationship-driven climate, a deep sense of belonging, collaborative, positive staff culture, strong supportive leadership, clear communication, family engagement, and some opportunities, crowding and facility strain, clear, consistent communication, lunch, recess, supervision, homework, workload balance, and operational support. So you look year by year, some of the top comments, and this is where you do see some of the growth. On the left, the district-wide successes and some of the opportunities. You look at 2023, for example, an opportunity, bullying and social climate, which when you look at that's presented as an opportunity, an area we needed to address. And, I think the middle school's rolled out a lot of different programs in particular. You get to 2025, that's listed as a strength, as a success. With like No Place for Hate, the listening tours, the assemblies, strengthening student voice and belonging. That's a real plus. The facilities as early as 2022. Clearly, that's been flagged, and anyone who's been around know we've addressed and continue to address the facilities. Mr. Graham and his team do an incredible job, and that's ongoing work. Certainly improved over where it's been. And you don't see that pop up as much district-wide in terms of most cited. In this year, 2026, point out the tech rules, Chromebooks and phones, primarily have to do with the governor's device ban, which has been, quite frankly, wildly successful from certainly an adult point of view, and even for a lot of kids, but there's still kids who would certainly prefer having their phones accessible all the time. So I presented this part on Tuesday night, taking all of those comments. So what did we do? What do we do with all those, right? So at the beginning of the year, we developed and presented our district priority areas. So we mapped those comments into the district priority areas in terms of what we heard, some comments that illustrate what we heard, and then some opportunities and considerations. These slides were presented on Tuesday. It's still an important part of what we're trying to do, fit this all into the context of, where we are this year, what we're trying to do. I do want to point out, however, one thing I added on this one, as we look deeper into the comments, there was the desire for elective offerings at the middle school, but also very strongly at the high school as well. That was a common comment. So both at the secondary level, this desire for expanded elective offerings. District priority 2, professional learning for faculty and staff. Lots of comments, as I mentioned on Tuesday night, about professional development, how it's done, how it's delivered, how it's sustained. Certainly, as we are looking into next year, one of the things we're looking to get in place in our budget, of course, is the instructional coaches, which provide that job-embedded, on-time, on-demand professional development that seemed to be requested in the comments. Priority area 3, culture of care, belonging, and well-being. What we heard, students appreciate the caring teachers, but as with any large organization, this desire for consistency in terms of enforcement and the environment is certainly desired. Longer lunch and recess, more breaks, and some more SEL supports. A number of the schools have put in place at the elementary level the Green Time, which is really an outgrowth of our ruler program, and have seen some real positive feedback from putting that in place, especially after either recess or lunch.
Please explain what Green Time is for those of us that may
Right,
not.
so Green Time is, so you come in from lunch, you've been running around, you're all worked up. Green Time, 5-10 minutes, just stop. You're in a green zone, which is that calm zone. Maybe you meditate, you contemplate, you relax, you do something by yourself. There's no talking. You don't jump right into reading. And what schoolwork, what teachers have found is the time it takes to get everyone settled and doing something mindful, for example, saves them a ton of interruptions later on, because they've calmed down, they've settled down, and then they're ready to work.
I think some of them have like stations with options for what you could do with Green Time, where you can read, or you can do like any
different activities, but all about just calming yourself down.
Decompress.
Yeah.
like a transition.
Yeah,
Right?
we all need, right? Priority of 4, partnerships that empower. What we heard, the appreciation for Parent Square, as I mentioned earlier, but holy smokes, a lot of messages, and maybe we decrease it, provide greater clarity. Priority area number 5, efficient operations and future-ready facilities. Certainly, there's recognition. It's been part of our budget discussions, part of our Board of Ed meetings about the need to invest in our facilities. The students are mentioning that, from bathrooms to lunchroom overcrowding, and we heard that just on Tuesday. Our middle school, of course, we can't even fit an entire grade in the lunchroom. The cafeteria space is simply not sufficient. So that will continue to come up, which is why we have a plan. We've got a facilities plan to address these areas each and every year. One of the questions that came up last on Tuesday was about homework. So I went back, we had asked some questions about homework. So these are the responses broken down, grades 4 through 5, 2 questions. How much homework do you get on a typical school night? How helpful is your homework? So for grades 4 through 5, 76% are indicating 0 to 1 hours worth of homework, and 20% 1 to 2 hours. Referencing our Board of Ed policy 4730, that suggests 40 to 60 minutes per night in grades 4 through 5. It seems to me we're pretty much hitting the target by and large in grades 4 through 5. Other question, how helpful is your homework to your learning? From extremely helpful, quite helpful, and somewhat helpful. By and large, students are finding it at least somewhat and beyond. If they're not finding it very helpful, that's a good point for teachers to take in consideration. Grades 6 through 8, same policy is suggesting 60 to 90 minutes per grade, per night in grades 6 through 8. That seems to be what we're hitting. The majority, 46%, are saying 1 to 2 hours of homework. 0 to 1 hours, still 27%, so that's a manageable load. We do see an increase in the students finding it either only slightly helpful or not helpful at all. At the high school level, the policy is a little more complicated because they're suggesting 90 to 180 minutes per week per course for our regular courses, and if you're in honors or AP, it's 180 to 240. These numbers still fall within in those policy guidelines.
And it's hard to interpret, right, because these answers are coming from both AP students
Correct,
and non-AP
a combination
students.
of both, yeah, but it's,
And we don't have the data to separate by classes.
That's not part of
because we're not
the-
collecting that,
yeah,
right?
we didn't collect how many APs. That's something if we wanted to inquire further, we could. That's certainly something to consider.
Have a good break.
A few final notes, consistency and clarity. That's a common theme among all stakeholders. They want predictable, transparent systems. Everyone's experiencing and feeling time pressures, tight schedules, homework load, limited collaboration periods, short lunch recesses. The importance of strategic investment priorities, from paraprofessionals to technology to facilities. We have comments that point to the impact of resource allocation on teaching quality and our student experience. And really the most important is this notion of positive relationships, which is a theme throughout all years of the survey. Students speaking to positive relationships. So that's really the broader overview of our results, trying to address some of the issues that were brought up by the board, and highlighting both this year's results as well as a longitudinal analysis.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I was looking for something that I didn't circle and I meant to. So, again, we saw a bit of this on Tuesday, and this is a little more detail here. We've been looking at this year over year in our public meetings in the evening. I think this is the first time we've brought it to curriculum.
Correct.
So, we wanted to have more time here to take a deeper dive, than in the evening. And as I usually do, I will turn it over to Rachel and Sandra.
I just want to start with a comment, like a high-level comment. First of all, thank you for doing all this work. The thing that I think is the most striking about this to me, that sort of hit me as I'm reading it, is that, this isn't a portrait of perfection, right? But it's a very honest portrait, and the thing that really strikes me is that when you look at the key priorities and the opportunities where we need some improvement, I noticed you used the word opportunities, there's remarkable alignment between what the priorities are that have been set by our administration, by you, by the board, and by the feedback in here from parents, students, and teachers. And I don't know that I've ever seen a document where it looked like every stakeholder in this district was so closely aligned on what they think are the positives and what needs improvement and what needs to change. And I was just stunned by it, because, under the priorities, all the things that you highlighted are things that the administration knows and is working on, right? And the slide that you have too, with the areas of success, I was very struck by the fact that you could trace through students, families, teachers, all thinking that we have a respectful school environment, right? Because that's been something that in the past, there have been complaints about on both sides. On all sides, really, right? Like complaints about students and families and how they treat teachers, and complaints from teachers on how they're being treated, and complaints from students on how they're being treated by teachers. That's amazing, and it seems to me that that is a very important piece. That's the foundation, right? Because if you're functioning with all stakeholders kind of on the same page on what we're doing well and what we need to improve, and it's a respectful environment where we can all talk about those things, like that's a great launching ground for making literally everything better. I'm gonna stop there and let Nan and Sandra jump into some specifics if they want to dive in first. I think there are a lot of specifics that we can get into, but that's my global, high level. I was struck.
And I appreciate that, and if I can, just some context. One of the reasons why I felt it was important, we've done this survey each year, right? And presented sometimes in abbreviated version to the board, but we've never really timed for a lengthy discussion. And I think, 5 years, 5 surveys, right, from 2022 to 2026, it's a lot of investment, right? There's the actual instrument as well as the time, developing, administering, setting it up, and people filling it out and people chasing others. So, the question sometimes we get is, well, does it matter? Right? And what I was hoping to show through the presentation is it has always mattered, and we have always looked at these, and here's, looking at it sort of longitudinally, how it has impacted us, because you're right. The priority areas, there's a reason why those are priority areas. And of course, areas of success, opportunities, we do have a lot more about respectful relationships. Does that mean everyone's always 100% on every single? Of course not, of course not. But that is something that's valued, and it is mentioned overwhelmingly. And as we highlight that, everyone gets to see that's really important to kids. That's important to families. I need to always keep that in mind. So this helps reinforce, in my view, the sort of behaviors we'd like to see as well.
I think that's a very good point, because the alignment comes from listening, right? listening through the survey, listening in general, all getting on the same page and understanding what we need to do to make the district better and a better place for everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you. I know you have specifics. I can do specifics if you want, but you can go first too.
Thank you. Ditto, everything already said, right? There we go. So I did look at last year's survey, and I know you like alluded to it. You did the timeline on Tuesday of just common trends. And like on a simple like Google search, some of the things that are common here are just common everywhere. So like the cafeteria, spacing issues, bullying issues. So really my questions are just based on like some of the targeted items you listed last year and kind of what were the results from last year to this year with those items. So last year, bullying, right, the incidents of bullying. So one of the things you listed last year was you were gonna investigate the incidents of bullying and the data of bullying. So I'm just curious to know, you know, first off, who's reviewing it? And what came of that review? Was there an uptake? So I know, you know, I really do appreciate the transparency. You mentioned, like on Tuesday, not all districts share this much of the survey.
Right.
So I really appreciate it, and I hope none of my questions ever are like, let's downplay the transparency. You know, I think it's so strong for us that we are transparent, and anytime I ask my questions, it's really because I really respect that transparency and the collaboration, right? Like Ms. Keeler said, like the ability that all stakeholders are being heard. So with that, you did mention it last year already that someone, I don't know, it doesn't say who, but
Right.
will be looking at the data trends. And I don't think the public get to see like incidents, right?
Number of
it's-
students involved,
Correct.
number of incidents.
So what was that review? What did it look like as far as last year to now? Because it's still, that is not going anywhere, like I understand. You can't go for 1 year of bring all those numbers down, but it was noticeably 1 or 2% up, maybe more. So did that review happen, and what did that kind of review look like?
So I think that's an excellent question, and it's an excellent point. And that's also one of the obligations of our updated code of conduct, right, the CCC, to do that sort of analysis and and report. So as we have an updated committee with new members, and one of the reviews will be of a couple areas within the slide, the data related to the incidents. We are asking principals to speak to how the updated code of character, culture, conduct is impacting their buildings and what the results look like from year to year. So we will be addressing that and reviewing that at our the committee meeting.
Okay, and I think with that, for myself, there was 2 parts of that in where the survey results came. One was obviously the issue of students and families feeling the issue of bullying in general, right? Being the one that gets bullied. But then there was a twofold on the punitive, like the over punitive measures, which I think was in the elementary survey results, like the common themes. So I would just be curious what comes of the committee's, review on both of those ends. Like too much punitive, but then people are saying, I'm being bullied, we want action as well. I know that's like a fine line of, how to handle that.
Can I just jump in and
Yeah.
clarify though, that I think those are not necessarily 2 sides of the same coin.
Yeah, exactly,
right?
yeah.
Like handling it, addressing it doesn't necessarily mean draconian,
Correct.
right?
Yeah. And again, you already listed, like, you're reviewing restorative practices, and just SEL in general. So I think for me, what I haven't seen is like, what are the results of that review? Like the data is telling, the survey's telling us something, but we didn't actually see like actual data this publicly.
You're right, you're not seeing numbers
yeah.
of the number of bullying incidents, so on and so forth.
One of the questions I had Tuesday, which,
Can I just, before you go on, right, and I do want to hop on to what you said, because what we perceive as action, right, somebody else may not perceive. If we do a restorative
Correct.
circle, well, that's no, I want it, drawn and quartered in a
Suspension, yes.
public
Yes.
forum, right? So it's all relative, and sometimes, but the incidents always get addressed, but sometimes what's perceived to be an effective action from perhaps a parental or a student point of view isn't necessarily what the school's done. So an important part of the code is educating parents about restorative practices, the value of it. And in our first few committee meetings, since we have a bunch of new members who haven't been trained in those, that's actually what we've spent a good chunk of time on, helping people become familiar with the practices.
Also, the word bullying is used different, bullying is overused. So I think we have to be careful with that as well,
Yeah.
right? So kids being mean is not necessarily bullying.
So
But it could be.
it could be.
It's the word choice, it was the only word choice I chose because it's on the slides.
Yeah, no, I understand, I'm just saying, there's times, bullying is more ongoing and consistent,
Yeah.
right? So,
And I think, there's an even stronger word, harassment, right? So there's the reverse of that as well, because what we saw, I think it was last year's information, I can't remember if it was this year, but, in the secondary level, just the online harassment. So I appreciate that. But to stay on the word with bullying, the reporting mechanisms, last year was gonna list just a review of the reporting mechanisms. And one of the questions this year that you showed was adults were asked and you actually brought it up again, adults were asked if your child reports bullying, how easy is it to find an adult? I don't remember the exact wording, it was on one of the slides. So has there been a review of the reporting mechanisms since last year and how easily, students can access this? I do know policy committee looked at, a certain policy, but real time for students, how have we looked at the mechanisms that they can report anything?
Right, so I am not going to say that I have done a review of that, but I think that's an excellent point, and we just happen to have our director of guidance here, and I think that's a good thing to overlook. How effective are those mechanisms? Are students aware of them? And are they being used? Yeah, so we
Because-
can speak to that. That's a good point.
Because you shared some of the questions, but one of the questions I wasn't
Correct.
sure with these incidents of bullying or meanness, of just more so, do they feel unheard, right? They're gonna occur, right? Little things are gonna occur, but are they telling the parents, Ms. Javelin, I'm sure has it a lot, where they're telling the parent but not the school.
Right.
But what is the mechanism for that? Not need for the middleman, the support systems. I think it's very different with secondary. One thing brought up in the policy committee was the elementary age and the mechanisms there. Right now, again, I don't know if it's changed, but reported is specific to secondary. There's no mechanism for elementary, so I don't know. And that's online form, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's different ways of,
What you are speaking of is best practices, right? And we want to make sure that at every level, students are aware of a system for reporting such incidents, and they know it's easy to do, they can do it anonymously, and they're being read, right? They have to know that they're being read. So, yeah, those are best practices.
The number of incidents will be interesting to look at year over year. Slide 23 was interesting because it shows in 2023, families and students, especially at Weber, cited lunchtime recess bullying and a need for stronger adult presence and restorative supports. Since that time, we have added some more staff to recess. In particular, some of our phys ed teachers are doing organized sports during recess. Ms. Javelin reports that that's been really very, very well received. And it's interesting, if you look at 2025, Enhanced Mental Health and Inclusion Initiatives, No Place for Hate, which is a Weber initiative, listening tours and assemblies, strengthen student voice and belonging, noted in Weber, and district feedback. So that's heartening to see that from the survey data, it seems like that has moved the needle with respect to how students are responding. Same with 2026. Early year survey show more students reporting they completely belong with strong student-teacher connections. So those are good indicators that we're not seeing that same comment come back in 25, 26. Conversely, we are seeing the facilities comments come back, year over year, and we know that that's an issue that needs our attention. But we'll now, I think, pair this with the year over year actual bullying data and see what that shows.
And I only have one more question. And it was a great preface because you brought up additional staff. So again, it was a common theme last year with the survey staff and teachers. I think it was more staff, might have been both. The need for more staff, more supervision. Last year it was listed that it was gonna be a budget review. So I don't know going into this year, budget-wise, if that is something being considered. And again, you spoke about it on Tuesday, like best practices is not necessarily always additional staff, but it could also mean that as well. So just if you are looking at that, because it is a common theme year to year, of where are we with staff allocations and is that being reviewed?
Yeah, absolutely being reviewed, and certainly the Board of Education will know if there's a request for any additional staff or shifts in allocation, for example, or deployment of resources in general.
As part of our next budget presentation, we're going to show a staffing plan in terms of, with respect to elementary class size, with respect to the shifting of FTEs that happen year after year at the high school, middle school, high school in particular, based on student requests, those kinds of things. So we're going to show all of that. In March.
Thank you.
Right?
Yeah, March 24th.
March 24th.
Not 10,
Right.
I heard. Thank you.
Okay. I almost never ask questions, but you made this short and sweet today, and I'm gonna squeeze some in before we move to the public. So just anecdotally, I've heard staff that have received training in restorative practices and have implemented some of those are extremely excited about the effectiveness.
Yes.
So I don't think we're at full capacity yet, correct?
Not at all.
Any idea of how close we are, how much more time and money needs to go into that?
So, we're at a point right now where we have a number of staff members who are able to serve as trainers and have worked and modeled these practices within their buildings, and that's been helpful. I think that as with any system, we've got a lot going on. We had staff restorative practices in each of last year's superintendent's conference days. That was a huge initiative. We did not have it present in the fall one. We're hoping to have another push in this one, but we're trying to balance that with our literacy initiatives, our mathematics, as well as some of our E&L work. But restorative practices, those who are using it are very happy with it, and we'll continue to try to expand its use. It is not a requirement. It is something that is being modeled and by administrators as well as key teachers as something very effective. And that has helped spread it. And we was it last year, 2 years ago, where was it last year we did our presentation here in December, I believe it was, where we went through and had a restorative, a community circle, which was great.
So in terms of requirement, are you referring to not required to sign up during one of the conference days? What do you mean by requirement?
No, as a mandate, that all teachers must use this, so on and so forth. Right now, we are selling it through its effectiveness.
Right.
pitching.
So that makes sense, right? You want buy-in and you
Correct.
want people to run to it, not be forced
Correct.
to it. How does that dovetail with our CCCCCC thing? And there, because there's a lot of language in there around using restorative
That is
practice.
the lens, that's the lens through which we respond to student behavior, if you will. So whether a staff member has been trained in restorative practices or not, that's how we are committing to respond to our students. And that's the accountability piece for how we as adults conduct ourselves, as well as our expectations for students and families as well. So even as we're building our capacity to implement it effectively across the board, that is the keystone is our code, and since that is written primarily through the lens of restorative justice, that's going to continue to impact how we react to disciplinary issues.
Please.
So, we've talked about ruler a bunch and restorative practices,
Yes.
and I always think one of the biggest hurdles, if not the biggest hurdle, to having it district-wide is the adults, or really the parents of the adults and the way they raised us. Because the mindset of restorative practices and of ruler is so different
Correct.
that I think if you don't actually take long enough to pay attention and listen and understand that we're talking about actual science, what people's knee-jerk response is, if you're of a certain generation or were raised by a certain generation, is like, okay, go get the drum circle, right? Like, instead of having accountability for bad behavior, we're just gonna sing a little song together, and then we're gonna pretend they didn't do it, and we're gonna raise this whole crop of spoiled children, right? That's the like.
Hugs and lollipops, I call it.
Yeah, exactly, but that's really not at
Not at all.
all what it is. It is science-based, it's teaching children their impact on those around them. It's instilling in them a sense of community. It's instilling them the ability to identify their own emotions and connect it to logic. I know, I'm sold.
Preaching, choir,
Right.
I'm with you.
We're talking for everybody else now. So I think though, like, if the adults are the hurdle, right, I totally understand not mandating it, because restorative practices implemented by somebody who doesn't believe in restorative practices is not gonna be effective.
No.
Right? It's something that you have to actually internalize, and then it's just in the background everywhere if you're doing it right. So I'm getting to my point. Over the years, over the many years, we've had many conversations about best practices and how to communicate best practices to teachers, or encourage the communication across schools, across grade levels from teachers. And this is one of those areas where it would really help, because the staff who understand it and believe in it are really the best salespeople
Yes.
for it. So I'm just throwing out there, and you don't have to answer this now, maybe it's time to revisit this idea of whether there's another way to communicate and highlight best practices for our teachers and staff. There have been many different concerns and objections to how we could potentially do that, but we know that there are grade levels that work really well together in individual schools, there are grade levels where there's talk between schools, and then there are also ones where the communication is not as good. So it's nothing more specific than that, just
Understood.
something to think about. We've talked about newsletters, we've talked about, recognitions of some kind.
There are ways to highlight. I'm just gonna push back a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
I would not call the adults they're not the obstacles here, right? So they're really not, because those who take it on have really loved it. And even when we forced teachers to participate in a community circle during conference day, you could see a lot of them, but they had to do it, and then
Me too.
Well,
I was like that when you forced us to do it last year.
And then how'd you feel afterwards? It wasn't bad, right?
Same.
You're killing me here. Right, but they go through the experience, like, oh, well, that wasn't too bad. So, in some ways, the quote, obstacle is time, right? And energy. And you think back to last year, we're trying to, we started restorative practices 2 years ago. With a group, got them trained, brought it out. Last year, we brought it wider. We're also implementing a brand new mathematics curriculum, K through 6, so you've got all of that work that needs to be done. I mean, there's a level of, holy cow, initiative fatigue. So we've got to be careful of that. So not call the adults the obstacles. In many ways, time is the obstacle.
I think you're right about that, and maybe the way I should have worded it is the mindset. Because I think you're right, if you are low on time, you understand as a default that math is very important, right? And that it is core to student success. And so you have to engage on it. And I think if you are limited on time, you're right, it's
And restorative
easier.
practices are important too, but yes.
It doesn't seem as important as it is.
Right, until you implement it and you realize it can buy you a lot of time in your classroom to do your mathematics and literacy instruction, but
It's the green time
Yeah, I was
piece,
thinking
right?
that,
You
yeah.
give up, but then you gain.
you gain,
Yeah.
correct. Correct.
Just a question, which I had in my notes, but then I was like, time-wise. This might be a stupid question. Who is in
Stupid
charge
questions.
of SEL and restorative? Like, who oversees that, the implementation? So the.
That's an amazing question.
The CCC has the committee and everything's there, but who's overseeing implementation,
Of restorative practices.
SEL and restorative
So
practice?
what I will
Two
say,
different things,
the
but-
SEL, and we've had a presentation a few years ago, typically falls within our
Curriculum.
guidance.
Okay, oh, guidance, okay.
Guidance under curriculum,
Yeah.
right? In districts that have really done a very strong push for restorative practices, they will typically have a restorative justice coordinator who does a lot of support, training, continues to push in, modeling. That's not where we are right now. We've got, if we're adding staffing, I mean, we've got our mathematics needs, our literacy needs, and those are the pushes right now.
I actually have seen, around the same twofold of SEL and restorative practices, in some of the conferences that like for chronic absenteeism, it has been either a guidance counselor or social worker that's already passionate in that, who, PGGC is.
PGCD.
Yeah, I always miss the letters.
You got
A
it.
lot of letters in this district.
The Ps, I'll say the Cs and the Ps. So, I know they have really great committees, but I've seen in other districts, outside of Long Island, they've had some really great passionate staff who'd asked to kind of create these committees and look into this and take it on themselves. I'm not volunteering staff, it's just, instead of allocating specific, because of funding.
Right.
Instead of, allocating a restorative justice director or anyone specific to SEL as a single component, staff came forward, so.
Right, and that's how we've been operating for the last year and a half, right? On the goodwill of staff who really believe in this,
Yeah.
that, the staff members who stepped forward 2 years ago to go through 4 days of training. And,
Which is great.
which was fantastic. Then we had another group go through 2 days of training. So that was all voluntary and, they received no compensation, but they're serving as, the models, and they bring it to either faculty meetings or team meetings, whatever it might be. So that's how we've been operating.
Thank you.
While we're on this topic, I have a specific question. So on slide 27, on the feedback, there's a feedback for a request for less punitive approaches. And it says e.g. ID-related detentions. Can you tell us about that?
I did ask Dr. Bear about what that is. So essentially, if students don't have their ID 3 times, is when after the third, at time number 4, either 3 or 4, I'm not sure, they're issued a detention is what she had said.
Over the course of the whole year or within a certain timeframe?
Course of the year. And that's actually an excellent point, right? So there were two huge initiatives this year in both secondary schools. All kids wearing an ID, and that, especially at the high school, the phone ban. And once again, I think our kids have responded really well to that. But yeah, no, not everyone wants to wear an ID, and they certainly want to get detention if they've been caught a third time without it.
Is that Weber as well, or just the high school?
I think this was a high school
It's both.
comment.
That was a high school comment, but it's
Yeah.
both.
It's
We-
both.
We talked
And
about it together.
How many detentions are there related to IDs?
We're a little loose with that.
A little loose with it?
Yeah, we're trying to work with the students.
I mean, I'm happy to hear you say you're a little
Yeah.
loose, because this
Yeah.
seems not in line with our new code of.
If you just
CCC.
heard, I lose mine all the time, so I'd be on detention 10.
I mean,
I'm trying to work with the students, but it is a big problem. I think more so as the students get older. So like sixth grade's not such a big issue, seventh grade's not such a big issue, eighth grade we see more.
I wonder also though, as you said,
I've
it's a new
started
initiative.
giving candy,
Yeah.
but they have to have their ID on in order to get it.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if it's just that resistance and or the,
Like
the
an
habitual
initial,
kind of
yeah.
I
Same with
think
the
as the grades progress through, maybe we'll see less of it being a rejection and
I
more like
also
this is
think
what
once
we do.
we have some systems we're putting into place, they're just not there yet for both middle school and high school, where students are gonna actually have to use their ID to log into school for different things. So then if they have to use it more, then they'll have to have
That's
it.
more valued idea.
Yeah. It's a new thing. That's,
Yeah.
I'm
We're
not
in the process
surprised
of
there
building
was a
systems,
comment.
it just takes time with technology.
And if I could just add from, at the high school, my office is located there, so I see it every day. So the administration at the high school, it's not quite as punitive as that one bullet may make it appear. They're constantly asking students, do you have your ID on you? Can you pull your ID out? They're trying to set examples. They're trying to set the standard with staff and teachers and other administrators, and we have to be the leaders in the building. We have to have our ID. So it's not, oh, you don't have an ID, come with me, this is one knock against you. It's not like that at all. It's very much, if you walk the hallways, Dr. Bear's out there saying, do you have your ID? Can you pull it out? So can we see it? Can you just keep it on you? Thank you very much. And then when they come in and they forget their ID, because we're all guilty of forgetting it from time to time, there's a process in which they get an ID. There's no punitive response there. It's those habitual cases where students are insubordinate or resistant or refuse to comply. And as I'm sure everyone understands, it's a significant safety issue. We want to know everyone in our building belongs in our building, so.
so that I get, right? It seems to me it's very different if it falls in the category of an insubordination. It's somebody who's like, it sounds to me like you're describing some of these,
It's similar what he's also.
where it's like, it's a
I'm not
control
wearing it,
issue, it's a pushing back
not
on
at all.
school, it's showing that you don't have the authority over me, versus it seems to me from the stream of parents I see when I drop things that my kids forgot, that kids just forget
Yep,
things,
they do.
right?
They do,
Like,
but the building administration knows that. So, and listen, Dr. Bear and her team are not here to speak for themselves, but so hopefully I'm not out of line. They don't wanna provide detention to the kids. That's not beneficial for anyone. It's having that as, it's having that disciplinary option when it needs to be enforced and applied. But students forgetting that their ID and then going and following the proper steps to have a temporary one, they're not getting detention for that.
Dr. Bear shared a story with me. She ran into a student, didn't have the ID, as she does all the time. Hey, where's your ID? Can you take it out? Take it out. She takes out the ID, walks along, for whatever reason, literally runs into him. 30 seconds later, ID wasn't visible anymore. That's a problem, right? So the principal's asking you the ID, you say you comply, and then 30 seconds later, it's right back where it was. So, that's the kind of,
It's not good with the fit.
No, we get the love.
right.
But we've also worked with students with not good with the
Absolutely.
fit, right? I have someone that either wears it on her arm or in her hair. right? Like, they're students, if it bothers their neck, then we'll come up with a solution.
And
That's good to hear too, because I think that there are students for whom it's a sensory issue,
Yeah.
right?
And our assistant principals, they're great. They're at the high school, at both buildings, but
It's like, hey,
no, at both buildings, but I'm specifically talking about the high school. So when you see this happen, it's not, you're not wearing it again, let me write you up, you're getting a detention. It's come with me, let's have a discussion, let's talk about why this is important. Why this is important for the safety of everyone, including yourself. They are counseling students. So that is not the default. Nobody gets pleasure out of giving students detention.
So I guess I'm trying to, this sounds reasonable, right? But I'm trying to connect that to this being a priority area that we heard from students. That they want us to take less punitive approaches, like, this doesn't sound punitive, why do they think it's punitive? Or are they talking about other things? Or is it just announcing it like that that makes it feel like a punitive approach?
Right.
That's a great question.
It's a comment that was mentioned by more than a few students, which is not surprising given it's a brand new initiative for this year. When we, it didn't pop up, but for the 2022-23 school year, that was the first school year up at the high school that if there were free period, if a teacher didn't come in, we provided coverage rather than sort of canceling the class. We got a lot of complaints on the survey the following year, right? Well, why? We should have a free period if there's no subs free. We don't get that anymore because that's now norm behavior.
Yeah, it shows up under the comment, what is one thing that would make school better for you right now? Please be specific. That's the question that they were, the open-ended question that they were answering. And just when you look at some of the raw data, get rid of the phone ban, get rid of IDs, no more IDs, those kinds of things are what pop up in the raw data.
That's what I was saying before, it's this transition couple of years that
Not take the ID rule so
potentially
seriously. Yeah.
it'll just
Lighten
go
up.
away.
It's typical.
Lighten up with the IDs.
I guess this specific, like, less punitive approach is the part that concerns me. I was surprised by the ID-related detentions, but, like, I think that's students giving us feedback that we should take to heart, because given the code of conduct revision that we just did, it shouldn't feel punitive.
we
There are
didn't-
consequences,
Yeah.
but it shouldn't
You
feel
should
punitive.
explain why, and we can get a sense of how many actual ID-related detentions have been given. I don't think it's a huge number.
I'm gonna turn it back over if anybody else has questions, but I wanna just highlight, and you can add anything if you want, that I, in particular, was really pleased to see, among the trends, that we think there's increased academic rigor and expectations. I happen to think that's very, very important, and I think it's great if we think that the trend is going that way. Obviously, to me, always with the caveat that if we're serving every kid, like, academic rigor means challenging every single kid where the challenge is for them.
Right.
But I'm assuming that's what we're doing, and I think it's great.
I just had a couple other, page 17, slide 17, not high-tech enough yet, never will be. Where it says from the teachers, consistent timely communication and recognition from leadership. As a board member, I'm asking if you have a sense of what recognition from leadership means, and is that something that we play a role in, or are they specifically meaning administration?
So, listen, I think that we read that as a priority. This is something they value, that consistent, timely communication. Recognition for either a job well done, whatever it might be. That's what they're looking for. That's not to say that's not present, because we'll see in other comments that they value the leadership and the culture that the building administrators are forging in each case. But yeah, this is something they like. Rightly so, who doesn't, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't more than that.
No.
Okay. So I mentioned this on Tuesday and I think it's bears repeating that I loved how you were able to put this together with our priorities and our goals. I think it just helps focus everyone on where we can improve and how it fits into what we're spending our time and our money on already. So I really, really appreciate that. And the other thing that I really appreciate about this is kind of a focus that I think this board has had for a number of years now, which is that this is more example of a growth mindset and what are we doing well and where can we grow and improve and strengthen and expand all the good things that we're doing so that it's not in your term pockets of excellence, but more of a
Consistent.
whole system-wide
Yep.
experience for our families, our students, and our educators, and leadership. So I really appreciate the growth mindset about this survey and us, as we discussed, the transparency level, I think it creates trust among all the stakeholders that we're being honest and looking in the mirror and talking about where we can make everyone's experience better. So I really, really appreciate that approach a lot.
Yeah, nobody wants to put up survey results and see red areas where things have even declined a little bit, right?
Right.
But, yeah, that's what the numbers.
Wonderful. And at 11:10, we have 20 minutes for community comments as well. So,
And I think a lot of these specifics that we're not digging into are actually subjects we're gonna get into in later curriculum meetings.
hi Jess.
Thank you for this analysis and putting it together so clearly. I think that we had a couple things, but I mean, I think that a deeper dive into the homework policy, based on these results, is definitely something that, should be done. Particularly looking at like the middle school, the grades 6 through 8. Because I think that there is a significant portion of students that are missing the mark. If you're, there's 187 kids that are spending 2 to 3 hours of homework per night, 111 kids spending more than 3 hours of homework per night. That's nearly 300 kids, more than a quarter of kids that are way outside of the limits, and that's not even counting out of the 488 kids that say that they spend 1 to 2 hours per homework, on homework per night, but 90 minutes is the max. So a portion of those children are actually spending a lot of homework, and so that's a larger number that's outside the limit. And I think it's particularly impactful when you think, or when you question what that group looks like and why they're spending so much homework. How many kids are spending too much time because those kids have IEPs, because it takes them longer to finish their homework, because the homework doesn't seem like too much, but it's, if you didn't finish this in class, take it home and do it for homework, and the kids that are struggling to finish their work in class then have more homework.
I also just question, like, are some of those kids our accelerated students that are taking high school level
Right,
courses? Because then
that could
that,
increase
so like
the
even
amount.
though the board policy for 6 to 8, but they're taking high school courses, so when you, who are those students, I think is
Right,
important to look at.
I think it could definitely be broken out more just to see like where, where the problem issues are. And as you said, if some of them are gonna have to do more homework because they're taking the higher classes, but we don't know that yet from these numbers. So that brings me just to the point is, I think it would be helpful for next year to have some of these results broke, or, have even a question in the survey that's trying to identify like subgroups that people are, like ENL subgroups and people and kids that are receiving special education services, because I think that that's important to look at as well. And I also am just gonna reiterate, I've been saying this a lot in policy and here as well, I think that there needs to be a presence at the table from a representative from PPS at all of these meetings to look at all of these issues. So that was one thing I had, and then,
So,
yes, oh,
thank you.
sorry.
That's okay, I'll let you do the other
Sorry.
one. I think the homework thing was not on the original presentation presented to the board, added on as a result. I think what you're asking for is certainly something we can do, similar to the requests, how many of those are taking APs, this and that. So, if the board's looking for a little sort of deeper analysis of these results, we can fine tune it with a couple of questions and be able to provide that,
Can I
so,
just-
thank you.
What did policy say?
So that's
We've been
a
talking about potentially doing it.
I was about to say that we, for years, as all of us have sat on policy, understand that we always have a list of 700 policies that we would like to address on an annual basis. And one of them has consistently been asking for a review of how our homework policy
current
is
one,
being
yeah.
implemented. And it has never come to the top of the list. So it's always been on our radar since it was initially adopted, and it still has not been analyzed.
I wonder if that would be a good work session dual. I haven't seen like a dual,
We haven't
I
seen
saw
one
it on
for
the
this
board
year.
docs, like when I was looking for something, I was like, oh, they used to do dual work sessions
Oh, we
of
didn't do any last year, yeah.
curriculum and policy.
It's
Because,
sometimes been with budget, it's
Yeah.
been all kinds of combos,
so I
yeah.
wonder if that's like something next
But I think
year
we did homework originally as a dual.
as a dual, yeah, because it makes sense,
'Cause it was
if the
curriculum
policy
and
was
policy,
created and
right.
it was like
Yep.
an actual review.
Can we also add, is their cell phone next to them while they're doing homework?
If what?
Their cell phone is next to them while they're doing homework. Because some of that, like
I mean,
the
mine's-
data, they may be spending that much time, but if their cell phone's next to them, they're not really spending that much time.
Yeah.
Because we do talk a lot about homework in the middle school and we don't give a lot, in my personal opinion, some classes, yes, but I would just be surprised, there's a distraction among students, and if their cell phone's next to them, I don't think that's fair to say that we're giving too much homework if they're distracted.
Anecdotally, I can say that my child doesn't own a phone and he does a lot of homework. Just, I did it, I know Mr. Smith brought up his child. I try not to bring my child up, but we don't own phones. So I think that the look at the IEP, and put aside the IEP, just a struggling student regardless, who's using the phone to help them,
And I'm not saying it's always distraction, but I think there are things that play into the
100%.
middle school's life.
I just think it's like
You had
an important,
another
no,
question.
you know what, just to follow up on that, none of these other points are really quite important, but I just think it's important to look at, I just think that even like in 90 minutes, like we're always like as adults, I think talking about work-life balance and when you have kids that come home after spending 8 hours in school, and they say, I just spent the whole day in school, why do I have to do 2 more hours of work, that like, and I don't always have a good answer for that, to be honest, and I think that obviously I'm gonna take what middle school students say with a grain of salt, but even if you look at like the numbers on like how helpful is your homework, like full half of them say that it's slightly helpful or not helpful at all, and those that could just be middle school complaining, but those numbers are not as bad both for the elementary school kids and at high school. I think it could be a recognition that it is more valuable, but I would just hope that I would hope that it makes its way off the policy committee
I think
long to-do list, I don't know.
I'm in agreement that we need to do a deeper dive on it, but I think maybe the underlying question here is how do we gather data that tells us what we need to know about whether
Yeah.
it is too much? Because we can do anecdotally, you're right, probably for some students, the phone is sitting next to them. We could poll parents. Anecdotally, I could say as a middle school parent, I see huge variation in the amount of homework. I think probably Ms. Feingold and I could say the same class that has a truly excessive amount of homework sometimes. But like, how do we wrap our arms around, is this that it's too much or it needs to be structured differently? Or is it that students need better study skills and need to understand how to study, because I do think middle school students are in this hard middle zone where they don't have a lot of impulse control. the amount that's needed to ignore your phone, and haven't gotten to the point where it feels high stakes enough that they need to get those skills. I don't know, like, to my mind, that this should wait for the next climate survey. I think a joint session sounds great if we have time. I know time's always the enemy, but like, if we have time, maybe there's a way to like review this and try to figure out the additional data. Because I think this gives us an overview and some thoughts, but we need to understand, and maybe you already do and you're just not telling us, but where there are pain points, if any, and how to address it. And I don't mean that's policy, and maybe you're already hard at work.
Anecdotally, I'll also share that I'm hearing that it feels like there's more homework with iReady. I don't know how valid that is or not. I'm literally hearing that as a pain point as well. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Mr. Borda?
thank you. The issue you bring up of homework, but you're looking at it, like everything together. I think there are areas of classes where, and I will speak for high school, my years in the elementary schools are past, so days where they come 2, 3, 4 classes at once. I wouldn't say that there is a general problem with homework. I think most teachers are pretty reasonable, and but the lack of coordination, the lack of like, when I was an administrator, we had rules as to when teachers should give tests, not just to help the students. As a student should receive this test and you would work it out with the teachers, right? When it is the best way, so not to hit a student with 3 or 4 tests on top of homework and on top of this and on top of that. And I think that is going back to,
Mr. Havlin.
Javelin?
Javelin, right? I don't remember Javelin.
It's going to college. Middle school feels a
Thank
lot.
God it's not being directed at me. I don't think the phone is really a problem. I mean, it might be in some kids. Kids call each other. What happened in that math class? I didn't understand what was said. Can you tell me what is the solution to this problem? All these things are going on. So the kids do use, come on, we have to accept technologies here. Yes, it can be misused, and the big companies are misusing it for a lot of kids. But it would be nice to look at where is it coming from, the homework, the accumulation of homework. And this goes back to a theme that I have been talking about for more than 12, 13, 14, 15 years, and will continue speaking about it. You need K through 12 supervision. You don't have that. You don't have.
Did Dr. Feeney pay you for this piece of PSA?
15 years ago.
You don't have, but Rachel, if you don't have a conductor.
Oh, I agree with you,
If you don't have a conductor, I mean, anyone that is here familiar with music knows if you are directing a symphonic orchestra, even every player is very good, but unless the conductor is bringing the whole thing together, it's not going to work.
So we are excited because we are pitching for a K-12, pre-K-12 director of mathematics next year. So that's bit by bit. But we're going to run out of a little bit of time. Just want to make sure. Any other questions?
I just wanted to, I'm going to get to you. One of our roundtables that the board conducted across all of our buildings, I believe at the middle
I was thinking about that,
school, there was students brought up the coordination of tests
Not
impacting
overlapping.
the amount of time that they do homework, part of it being test preparation and studying. So it was just, and you were there, you heard them say that. So the students have brought that concern to us as well, and I believe it's on Ms. Javelin's radar.
Well, more than on the radar, because
We've
that was
actually
a push that
implemented it in
was
sixth
put in
grade.
place for sixth grade this year for the first few months
That's great. Amazing,
as part of the transition.
wonderful. Hi.
So thank you overall for a great and informative presentation. I just had a couple of things. I wanted to thank you, Rachel, for bringing up something that I know has come up in my home and in various places about kind of the punitive approach that I think a number of the high school students are experiencing lately. And I think it's not just limited to the IDs, but I was relieved, I guess, to see that there's more flexibility than what the rules seem to imply as they're written. But then I kind of wonder, why are they written that way and why can't we kind of put the nuance into the writing? Because I worry that if we don't make these things clear, that it kind of leads to potential disparity in how those rules are applied to our students. And I know that that's something that have been continuously dealing with, especially at the middle school and high school levels. And I also wanted to point out, I think it was slide 15, that a number of students talking about the research sites being blocked. I know this week the sophomore research students finally got access to more, and I'm certainly grateful for that. But I think it still requires that they have an additional outside device to use, which again kind of takes me back to the potential for disparities there, in that not every student has access to a second device that they can bring to school, like a personal device that their family now owns, to bring to school so that they can have access to even things like in the math, like they can't use Python on their school devices. So any kid that wants to do coding research can't unless their family purchases an outside device. And even on that, they've got to put GoGuardian on there, so now that device, there's a whole kind of host of privacy issues that raises. And the contract that they need to sign is, again, potentially really punitive. I don't know if there's more leeway in the rules that the families are not aware of, but the language on the contract is pretty harsh, and I don't know why we've kind of structured things that way.
These are issues that have been brought up, and I appreciate you bringing them up again. The contract, certainly that language needs to be adjusted. That's not how things are being enforced. But I do think your point about, well, if there's so much leeway, which there absolutely is, why do we have, 3 strikes and a detention? Then I think that's an excellent point. And I think that does, as we're reviewing our different codes and the agendas, I think that's an important point. The issue regarding the device, 2 things about the whitelisting. I think having a system in place where it's clearer and it's easier for students to report sites that they need whitelisted, because if I'm doing my thing, whatever it is, and I'm clicking away, oh, I need this site, it shouldn't be a mystery. Well, what do I do now? It should be clear. So that's one thing I'm already trying to work on. I spoke with Mr. Maloney at length on Wednesday morning about that issue, and the broader issue about device accessibility. I think that's an important one, and equity. We're going to be replacing devices over the course that's in the budget, hopefully, and will be implemented over the course of next year, not at the beginning of the year, but over the course. Those will be better devices. Not sure Python will run on those, but having options for kids who are doing school-approved research, right? We've got to make sure that they've got accessibility. So thank you.
Not to cut you off, sorry. The CCC committee, do they review individual school handbooks?
They have not. But having the alignment is important, and that's something that we will need to speak up. So,
The handbooks should be in alignment though,
Should
and
be.
I think the code would be,
Things, yeah.
I'm just, I'm running up a hard against a
Yeah,
hard
11:30.
obstacle in a few moments, yeah.
Can we speak separately, or
Is
is
there
it something
a
quick? We have people leaving, that's why I was asking.
It may be two quick questions. Yes, I can hold one to the side.
Okay.
It's particularly for a board member who.
I apologize,
Science. The second thing was, with the homework, whether that process will involve parents and board members. Dr. Feeney said we can look into questions to ask in the future. Just because I heard some guesses about
it will be
why
a public
homework numbers may
conversation
be
for
the way
sure.
they are, but it doesn't seem like we have an exhaustive list of guesses.
So
Wondering
when.
how that works.
Part of the conversation is that potentially we need a combination policy and this curriculum committee maybe coming back together again to look at the effectiveness of the homework policy. So that would always be in public as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so I apologize that we're cutting it not short.
We're
We're not cutting it
ending on
short, we're
time.
ending on time. Our next meeting is Friday, March 27th. We will be discussing the college admissions overview, and we hope to see you there. We wish you safe and relaxing holiday this coming week, and thank you for joining us.
And also note, college admissions is one of the priorities listed on here that I said we were talking about in the future.